I'm quite honored to speak to you today. The same square where the Declaration of Independence itself was read over 235 years ago. This is indeed sacred ground. Now, I'd like to share some perspective as a practicing OBGYN specialist who's dedicated his life, his professional life at least, to the care of women. You'll hear more about the primary issue, which is not contraception, I agree, the primary issue of religious freedom from everyone else in the panel. But since our opponents wish so much to promote their beloved contraception as if it were God's own gift to women, let's just take a few brief moments to talk a little bit about contraception. We have heard repeatedly that contraception should be considered preventative health care for women. Very well. This may surprise you, but I'll agree that contraceptives are preventative medicine for women, but not in the sense that is typically intended by this statement. The widespread and indiscriminate use of hormonal contraceptives is preventative indeed. It prevents women from preserving their reproductive health, and in many cases prevents women from ever having a proper diagnosis and treatment for the various pathologies that they may suffer from. Allow me to explain. All medications have potential side effects and risks that a patient should be informed of prior to starting any new drug. However, since hormonal contraception is used as a sort of panacea or cure-all for women's health problems, women are rarely, if ever, warned of the non-contraceptive health risks. The most serious risks pertain to breast cancer, cervical cancer, liver cancer, deep venous thrombosis, or life-threatening blood clots, and stroke. A truly honest analysis of the available research in this area repeatedly shows an increased risk of premenopausal breast cancer in particular. This is the most aggressive type, by the way. And an even closer examination reveals that young women who take contraception before their first full-term pregnancy, think of college women, adolescents, are at the greatest risk, more than a 40% increased risk of cancer, after only 4 years of consuming this toxin. An even less appreciated harm to women is that related to cervical cancer. Hormonal contraceptives, along with HPV infection, play a significant role in the development of cervical cancer, which is arguably the worst of all female cancers in terms of suffering. In fact, a typical woman's risk of this cervical cancer is increased by 280% after only 5 years of the medication, and by over 400% after 10 years of using hormonal contraceptives. If my use of the word toxin in relation to oral contraceptives sounds extreme or unbelievable, don't take my word for it. Look at the United Nations' own World Health Organization and their International Agency for Research on Cancer. In 1999, this expert group identified oral contraceptives as, quote, carcinogenic to humans, unquote, in the Group 1 category, which includes other notorious factors associated with cancer, such as asbestos, benzene, formaldehyde, hepatitis C, HIV, mustard gas, and even radioactive plutonium. Unfortunately, when the World Health Organization reaffirmed this classification in 2005, this was completely ignored by almost all media outlets. Look it up. The ubiquitous use of birth control pills as a sort of woman's supervitamin causes another problem, which I've alluded to. Whether she has abnormal bleeding, pelvic pain, ovarian cysts, or even acne, the easiest approach is to just send her on her way with a script for birth control. My job would be a lot easier if that's all I did. However, an approach that actually seeks to diagnose the problem and treat it requires more work, often much more work. It may require imaging studies, blood tests, and even surgery, sometimes advanced surgery. And while it's more work for us, it's what the woman really deserves if we are really, truly, if we are authentically concerned about her health. As a Catholic Christian, my faith inspires a deep commitment to do everything possible to provide the best care for my patients. In fact, as Father has said, and others, It is in serving the genuine medical needs of my patients that I put my love for God in action. My faith does nothing to hold me back from providing the best care to women. On the contrary, my faith and the teaching guidance of the Church hold me accountable to give my all in providing authentic and the most competent care possible to all of my female patients. Let me be clear. The Church does not oppose contraception, sterilization, and abortion-inducing drugs because she is indifferent about the health of women. She opposes such practices precisely because she cares so deeply about the health of women. The Church provides an ethical compass to hold us accountable to good science and authentic medical care. History does bear witness to the fact that Catholic and Christian scientists and many others of deep faith in God have been at the foundation and the forefront of the greatest advances in science. Let me give a few examples. That sacred place in a woman's body where a new life is created, known as the fallopian tube, is itself named after a Catholic priest and physician, Gabriel Fallopio. Similarly, in a similar fashion, the father of modern genetics, Gregor Mendel, was also a Catholic priest and an Augustinian friar. His name lives on in the laws of Mendelian inheritance, which we use to describe the hereditary patterns of genetic traits. The Scottish biologist Sir Alexander Fleming, whose discovery of penicillin in 1928 helped him earn the Nobel Prize in Medicine, was also a sincere Catholic, a member of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and a devoted husband. It has been estimated that well over 200 million lives have been saved with penicillin alone. Finally, let us remember that great French chemist and microbiologist, Louis Pasteur, the father of microbiology, who disproved the silly yet popular idea of spontaneous generation, no less, and whose name still lives on in the pasteurization process that we all benefit from. Therefore, we should recall that so many of the greatest achievements of modern science and technology, which we so often take for granted, they would not exist if it were not for the contributions of men and women inspired by a love of God and the human family. To the extent our society returns to a suppression of Catholics and other faith traditions, we will be suppressing further advancement of authentic science and truly good use of technology. Allow me to close by reading from a quote from the epitaph of Louis Pasteur's grave. Happy the man who bears within him a divinity, an ideal of beauty and obeys it, an ideal of art, an ideal of science, an ideal of country, and an ideal of the virtues of the gospel. Thank you all.